welcome to Up Close with Carlos Sang, celebrating art, entertainment, and the human spirit. Welcome to another episode of Up Close with Carlos Sang. I've been asked so many times to interview our next guest. I'm actually slightly starstruck right now. She is an Olivier Award-nominated actress who is currently starring in the brand new revival of Aspects of Love in the West End. It's a huge honour to be able to introduce the one and only Laura Pitt-Pulford. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me. That was a lovely introduction.
Thank you. So the first time I really came across you was in Falsettos back in 2019, and that was, the last time you really did the full run of something in London. How has it been, being back in the West End doing a big musical?
Oh, I'd forgotten how full on it is actually. And I'm coming back this time as a mother. I had a child since falsettos, so we had a baby in the pandemic. So that feels like another, a completely different beast to try and balance. But it feels incredible being back, mainly with a company, in a company, and a wonderful company at that. And being part of a show which I really love. I'm playing a role which actually similar. Falsettos and Aspects of Love are similar in the sense that they're both sung through,
Mm.
um, and that has obviously its own sort of not issues, but it's hard to maintain that 8 times a week, a completely sung through show where you don't stop singing for 2 hours solid. So that has similarities to falsettos, but obviously this one is I would say, well, it's Andrew Lloyd Webber, so maybe a little bit more legit in how it's written. So yeah, but in answer to your question, it's amazing to be back.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous, gorgeous show. I'm glad I've gotten to go and see it. And, it's been, 30 years since, Aspects of Love first, premiered on the West End. Why did now feel like such a good time to be telling the story again? And what was it about Rose that drew you to her?
Well, I have to say, I really didn't know the show at all. I didn't know the character of Rose. Um, so when I first read the libretto, I really didn't expect Rose to be who she was. I had no idea that she had this incredible journey which spans over 20 years. And, within those 20 years, we meet her and she's a struggling actress with no money. And, by the end, she's married, um, had a child, lost and lost people. And she has just this magnificent journey in 20 years in a I can't speak for a man, but in a woman's life where, you get married, you have children, and you think biologically what your body is doing over those 20 years as a woman. And then potentially, going into the menopause, things like that. It's quite a journey that you go on with Rose. So for me as an actress, I immediately felt compelled to the piece and wanted to do it because it was going to be a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was really, really intrigued to see that Jonathan Kent was directing the show. He's obviously not perhaps best known for doing musicals, but has definitely maintained, a reputation for, doing weighty dramas at, the National and the Almeida. How has it been, working with him, and what have the conversations been like on, bringing the show to a modern audience?
Jonathan Kent is one of the most wonderful directors I've ever had the joy of working with. And thank goodness we had him. And thank goodness we had someone who had the knowledge of putting on a play. And like you said, a weighty drama, because essentially this is what this piece is. Yes, it's sung throughout and the music is obviously a huge part of it, but really it's a play about this very small amount of people and their complex lives and how they interweave with each other. And we really needed someone who was able to find all those complexities and let us play with those as actors. So he was, I have to say, the most perfect person for this job. He has been, obviously, Jonathan being a man, he has allowed me to really have a voice in the room, especially for Rose. And at no point did he not let me try something or offer up opinions to anybody, actually. And it was such a refreshing way to work in a room where you feel trusted. You feel like your director really, really trusts you to make choices, and obviously he guides you if those choices aren't right, because they're not always right. But it was I felt like I was in a room full of equals, and that was really quite a wonderful experience. And we laughed a lot. So yes, we are so lucky to have him, and he was so the right person for this piece.
Absolutely. I feel like Andrew Lloyd Webber as well. He sometimes gets a lot of flack, within the industry. His work isn't seen as being particularly cool compared to some other works. I know you did Sunset Boulevard as well, earlier on in your career. Were you always hoping to do another Lloyd Webber show after that?
I mean, listen, Lloyd Webber. I grew up with Lloyd Webber. He's huge. He is huge, and his music is beautiful. I mean, I think this is one of his most beautiful scores, and also actually Sunset Boulevard. I'd say they're my two favorites of his. And the thing with Andrew is that he is so wonderful at writing songs where you can soar, and you really have those moments and aspects of love, similar to Sunset, where vocally you can just let your voice soar, and the emotion is just all there written for you, and the orchestrations, and it's a joy to sing. But I have to say, it's really complex. It's very hard, and it was very hard to learn, the hardest thing I've ever had to learn. And it's only when you start working on the piece that you realize how many just really intelligent choices that have been made that I guess as an audience member you might not even pick up on, but working so deep with the piece, you go, oh my goodness, that has reflected that moment that happened in Act One to represent, and it's very clever. It's very clever. He's a very clever man, and it's an honor to be able to perform his work every night.
Yeah, absolutely. And aspects of love, this sort of legit style of musical, not many new shows are being written in this way. And there's not many shows like Aspects of Love on the West End right now. Do you think, we'll ever see a return of this sort of musical being written and, having it be popular as well?
I think the West End is important that we have variety. It's important that we don't just stick to one thing, and it's important that we're telling stories that can feel current, whether that be taking a classic and making it feel more current, whether that be new writing. I think ultimately London should be filled with exciting different work, from different writers. And I know that's hard, because I know that we have to, as producers, we have to cater to what we are assured will sell. So a lot of risks have to be taken in order for that to happen. But what I do think about Aspects of Love is that there is nothing like that currently on in the West End,
Yeah.
and I think there is an audience for it, and it does feel different to other shows that are happening at the minute. But yeah, I guess what I'm saying is variety. It's important that everyone feels that their story is being told somewhere.
Yeah, I totally agree. And obviously, it's been a challenging time for Angelo Lloyd Webber recently, with his son Nicholas recently passing away. I know you actually got to work with Nick Lloyd Webber on The Little Prince back in Belfast, a couple of years ago. What was that experience like, and what memories do you have working with Nick too?
I Nick is one of the most wonderful people that I've ever met, in every way, in talent, in generosity, in Nick had the ability to walk into the room and the whole room will light up, because he is a joy. He had the most wonderful laugh. It's the greatest loss, I have to say. And it makes absolutely no sense. And I can't imagine what it has been for Andrew to have to experience losing his child. As a mother, I couldn't even fathom that. So it has been a really difficult time, and I feel very sad. And working with Nick was incredible on a brand new piece that he'd written with Jamie Reed, who's a very good friend of mine. Um, we had an incredible time. We lived in this bubble in Belfast, all of us, and um, yeah, it was joyous. But I'm very sad by the loss of Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. I was really curious as well to find out more about your relationship with Alex Parker, as you've collaborated on so many different projects, from Barnum to the Quick Fantastic concerts of Gypsy and Little Night Music, and his original work too. Why have you also, kept returning to wanting to work with Alex?
I met Alex really early on in his career. I'm talking really early. He was so young and so youthful. I mean, he still is. And I was sort of at the time, I think I was working at the Curve Theatre doing, I think, Hello Dolly or something. Um, and yes, we sort of got together and he asked me to do a little night music, and it sort of that relationship blossomed from there. Really, I I'm always drawn to Alex because he is so infectious. His drive, his passion, his love for musical theatre, his love for the industry, and just the risks that he takes to put on these really incredible concerts. And I'm talking when he puts them on, there he really does go for it. He gets the greatest people involved. He has the most wonderful musicians. Even just for concerts, he hires in the best wiggies, and uh, he loves it. And I think that's such an important part of our industry, is to surround yourself by people that love what they do and wake up every morning, and it's the thing that keeps their heart beating. And he has that. He really has that, and he's very good. He's very good. He's also very loyal, and I think that stands for a lot in this industry.
Mm.
Um, but we have known each other for years, and he's a bit like family now, to be honest. And it's nice to think of it that way too. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. We've also gotten little sneak peeks into the Danish girl musical that he's been developing, and that's really exciting. I came to the Crazy Cox show last year, which I really really loved. When do you reckon audiences might be able to get to see the full piece?
Um, well, it's going really well. There's lots of writing happening for it. I think we're going to try and do another workshop of it maybe towards the end of the year, which is really exciting. So, I mean, I'm hoping it could be maybe next year, 2024. These things, they're hard. They are New musicals are hard. You want to get them right, and in order to do that, you need money and support. But I do have to say, it's a really beautiful piece, and I would say Alex and Katie's best work. Um,
Mm.
so I'm really excited to one day hopefully be able to share it with everybody.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I know that you also recently turned 40 this year, and I wanted to ask, how have you found the year so far, and what are your hopes for this new decade of your life?
Oh well, this year has ended up being one of the best years of my life. If anyone thinks that you your life's over, or I, I'm like quite the opposite. I've worked 20 years in this industry, and I am now playing a lead in the West End. Name, Petra up outside the theatre, um, and so it's a long game. It's the long game. I think if you want to do it properly, and you love it enough, then you hold out and you keep working really, really hard.
Mm.
So yeah, so turning 40 was really exciting, I have to say, and I felt very lucky. I have a beautiful baby boy,
Mm.
um, and a beautiful husband, and I had an incredible surprise party where just so many people in the room that have been on this long journey with me were there, and um, yeah, getting old is great. I know as women we're told we're not allowed to get old and we have to keep looking young, but I couldn't disagree more. I think all the best parts are waiting. I think women getting older are the most interesting characters to play. Um, they are, yeah. There's a lot that happens once you
Yeah.
get old. Mm.
Absolutely, I completely, yeah, I agree. Yeah, and also, as you mentioned, you became a mother recently as well, during the pandemic. How has it been, juggling, parenting with work, and, has motherhood, changed you at all as well too?
Oh, like yeah, motherhood changes you completely. You can't ever really explain how, or yeah, you can't explain how it does, but it transformed you. But you were still the same person. You maybe feel differently, and you might emote differently, and things can hit much harder, I find, since having a child. There's lots of things I can't watch on the television anymore because I'm just not emotionally able to. But I guess you can look at that as a quality as well in life. But it changes you. And going into this job, it was always going to be a huge job. Rose is a massive role. Um, and so it means you have to put a support mechanism around you, which I did. I have an amazing husband who's been there, and grandparents and friends who knew that sort of they were going to need to be on board at times, and they have been. So yeah, it's a balance, but it's I want my son to see his mum at work, and I want him to see me doing something that makes me really, really happy. I think that's important. I think that's important that he sees that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's been a good couple of years since Platinum too, when you got to work with, your now husband, George Blagden.
Yeah.
And yeah, you've not really worked together since that project. So, is that something that you would like to do as again, in the future?
We'd love to. We would absolutely love to. And maybe one day it will happen. Maybe we should put something on. I think, I mean, I'm obviously biased, but he's just one of the most extraordinary actors I've ever met, George. So the fact that I'm married to him is a joy. But I couldn't think of anything better than working alongside him again because he's very clever at what he does.
Yeah, I know you did, however, get to work with Adam Penford again on PF, one of the first shows to like reopen during the pandemic, and I loved your portrayal of Marlene Dietrich. I thought that was just so spot on. How did you find that experience, playing, such an icon of 20th century culture?
Oh, I mean, she was amazing. I loved it. It was sort of it was just a really great job because she has a couple of really cracking scenes and obviously and a wonderful song. And you sort of get on, you can do your thing and leave, and it's sort of wonderful. And she's this strong woman who just walks into somewhere and everyone's heads turn. And yeah, there's something very powerful about being able to play a role like that. So yeah, that was a joy. That was a joy. And obviously working with gorgeous Jenna Russell and Sally Ann Triplett, who are great friends. And that was lovely. And obviously we were sort of still in the COVID times. So for all of us, it was the first thing that we'd done for a long time after not working for a year or whatever. And so we were just all really happy to be seeing people. And although we were still socially distanced on that, so we had to block the whole show 2.5 meters away from each other, which now I think of it is absolutely insane. I don't really know how we did it, but we did. And Adam, I mean, I love Adam. Adam always claims that he's responsible for George and I getting together, which he actually is, to be fair. He directed Platinum, so he was the person that we met through. So yeah, I adore Adam, and he's really great at what he does, and I'm really excited to see what else he does in the future.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting, looking over your career, you've constantly, worked at these, regional venues like Leicester Curve, Nottingham Playhouse, and you've also done a lot of like the smaller venues in London as well, like the Many Chocolate Factory, Suffolk Playhouse. Was it always, a conscious decision, to do shows at those places rather than doing some of the more commercial shows on the West End?
It sort of was. I have to say, when I left drama school, I knew that I wanted to be playing roles. It doesn't matter how big they were, but I knew that I wanted to be sort of going in there with some nice roles to play. So I started in regional theatre, and honestly, I am so thankful for that because I learned everything by working at these regional theatres with amazing actors and also making lots of different contacts because regional theatres often their runs aren't a year long, they're maybe 6 weeks or not even that sometimes. So I was lucky enough that I did work in lots of different regional theatres, and you build up many contacts and you work with lots of different companies, and that is you're just forever learning. But I'm so supportive of all regional theatres. It's so important. I think about my little boy growing up and little me, little Laura. Like if I hadn't have had a theatre nearby to go to. We certainly couldn't have afforded to go to London every week. So they are the beating heart of towns and cities, and for kids that want to go into this, or just, I don't know, just see their stories being told on stage. Like, we have to keep them going. It's essential. So I'm a huge supporter of regional theatre, and some of the greatest work happens out in the regions. And like, come into London if they are great as well. And then yes, the chocolate factory was always somewhere I wanted to work. So that was amazing. It's a great space. It's such an adaptable space. Um, and Southwark Playhouse, the first Southwark Playhouse, which was in the tunnel. I mean, we did Parade and Mac and Mabel there, and I remember going in, and rats would have eaten all our makeup.
Oh, really?
Oh my goodness, we used to have to go in I remember when we did Parade, we'd have to go in. I'd go in early to take my costumes out of the dressing room to put them outside so they could air, because it was so damp and musty. And then you couldn't leave any food. You just find these like rat teeth marks in all your food. And I mean, at the time it was just part of it, but it does, I think, oh my goodness, the things that we do, but we loved it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, looking over your career, you've played such a huge variation of roles, from Lucille in Parade to Marlene Dietrich in Piaf to Rose in Aspects of Love. Um, were you ever worried about, being pigeonholed as an actress when you were first starting out?
I guess so. I always like to be pushed. I like to think that that's going to be a real challenge, and I might have to uh, well, no, I always work hard, but it's nice to think that something is going to challenge you in a role. So I try to do as many different things as you can, and it is hard to not get pigeonholed. I think in this industry, it is very easy for that to happen, and you go, "Oh, I know the person that can do that, such and such." But I often think it's interesting if you pick someone who not necessarily is always the first person that comes to mind, because we're actresses, we love to be able to adapt and mold into different people. It's very boring if all we can play is ourselves.
Mm.
um, yeah, so the more exciting and challenging for me, then the more I'm sort of drawn to a role.
Absolutely. Yeah, have any characters that you've played also, particularly stayed with you as well over time and, changed you and made you look at life differently?
Yeah, one role which was a huge sort of wow, that it wasn't, but feels like sometimes you play roles that you're like, it's like someone had written it for me. But when we did Parade and I played Lucille, I remember thinking, my goodness, this is what I could do for the rest of my life. It just felt so perfect. Um, and so her strength, I felt was just really resonated with me, and the whole story, actually, it's just such a beautiful, perfectly put together musical Parade. So I think there's qualities in everyone, in every character. You always take a little bit of you along with it. I mean, even Rose, I think some people would come and find Rose very unlikable, which I sort of love, because she's very flawed. And some people will come and be like, oh my God, I was rooting for her. She was iconic, and she just didn't care, and she was just living her life. And I love that it's quite Marmite, the role for that. But I mean, gosh, I see things in Rose that are similar to me. So, if she is unlikable, then that's slightly worrying. But I think we all do, whether we admit them or not. We all have essences of Rose in ourselves. But yeah, they're all quite wonderful.
Absolutely, and you've gotten to do a lot of concerts recently of musicals. I got to come along to Holland Park to see you do A Little Night Music, and last year I came along to The Witches of Eastwick in the West End. What is it like, doing these, one night only events, and how invested can you get with a character, and is it hard letting it go afterwards?
Terrifying. It is so terrifying, because often with concerts like that, you have had very little rehearsal, so probably a week if you're lucky, 2 weeks if you're very, very lucky. Um, and so you never quite feel like you know the piece well enough, because it's impossible to be able to by that point. So there's a lot of things that happen on a night like that. Is number one is you only get to do it once
Mm.
normally. So you're like, if I mess this up, and that's it. I don't get to rectify it tomorrow, or next week, or um, and you want it to go right for everyone involved. So they are so exhilarating, but also terrifying. And I think if you talk to any performer just before they're about to go on stage and do that concert, they will, and you said to them, here's a ticket, you can
Mm.
go and leave and not have to do this, they would go, I'll take it, thank you, I'm off. like, that's what happens just before the introduction, and you're sat there and you're like, I can't do it, why am I doing this, why did I say yes, why did I say yes? And then you go on stage, and then it goes and it happens and you finish and you're like, oh my goodness, when's the next one? And we all say the same. It is but that's why we do it, isn't it? Because there's a thrill that's involved in it, and the thrill of something could go wrong, and then when something does go well, it is just such a sense of achievement, and yeah, it's an overwhelming feeling.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, like coming back to and Little Night Music in Holland Park, when it started raining as heavily as it did, did that, make you, have it make any changes as well to the way that you sang Petra and sang The Miller's Son?
Oh no, I just thought it was amazing. I was 7 months pregnant, and it just poured, and I just sort of thought it was like it had been sent for us. I think the most amazing part actually was because this was another show that happened in 2020 COVID July, so that was really early, and we really had been locked up for quite a while. That it was unbelievable watching the whole audience sit there with rain dripping off their noses. I've never seen torrential rain like it, and they stayed. I couldn't believe that they just, for us at least, we were sort of moving around, and sort part of us were in shelter. But for them, they were sat in this downpour and they didn't move. And it was really emotional just seeing how important theatre was and how much people had missed it, that they were prepared to be drenched from head to toe to witness some theatre and to just, have that escapism for one night.
Yeah, I remember like sitting there just so determined to like sit through it. I was a bit like,
Yeah.
it's on dime. I don't know when I'm going to go to the theater again. So I was like, this is going to be amazing. And listening to you sing The Miller's Son was just so, rapturous and riveting. I enjoyed it so much. And of course, Witches of Eastwick last year as well, another one night only. How was it, getting to play Jane Smart, who's, such a vivid character as well too?
Brilliant. I love Jane Smart. I mean, again, she has this brilliant transformation in the show, which was so much fun to play. I mean, what a song. Um, but yeah, I mean, again, it was one of those things that I remember. I remember Maria Freeman being like, "You won't have to play the cello," and then suddenly there won't even be a cello, she said, and then suddenly. I got there and there was a cello, and then suddenly I was learning how to bow, and I'm within the week of rehearsal, I'd gone from not even having a cello to really, learning notes. And I remember thinking, this is crazy. What are you doing? This is absolutely insane. But again, it was one of those nights that was just exhilarating. You have no idea what's going to happen, and then they say, "You're going to fly. We are going to fly you." And you rock up on the day of the concert, and we were wired up, and there we were, just hanging in the air. Um, but it was great. They are always really wonderful to do, as terrifying as they are. They're really special to do, and for an audience, you're there witnessing it happening that once. So you sort of, I think, when you go to those sort of concerts, you're prepared for things to go wrong, and you're so much more forgiving, and you sort of feel like the audience and performers become one. You're all sort of there just wishing and holding hands and going, come on, we can all do this. You keep clapping, we'll keep singing.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love coming to those concerts. They always feel just so special. I guess with The Witches of Eastwick as well, especially, because there hasn't been a major revival since when it was first done. What do you see as being the future of that show now too?
I really don't know. I mean, there was talk of it. There was talk of it potentially happening. I think with a few rewrites. I mean, we did a few rewrites as well, but I think with a few changes here and there. I wonder what it could be in 2023 and onwards. But yeah, I mean, people love it. It feels like a real sort of cult musical. People really are fans of it. So who knows? Who knows? Maybe we'll see it again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was so wonderful getting to see it, having missed it the first time round. And I've had so many people say so many lovely things about you on this show since I first started this series, from Joanna Riding to Jenna Russell to Freddie King. Yeah, people seem to really love working with you. I was wondering, which actors have you loved working with in the past and would love to work with again in the future, again and again?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, the Sally Ann triplet, I adore. I just think she's wonderful on and off stage. Jenna Russell again, just brilliant. Um, I mean, right now I'm working with Michael Ball, and I have to say he is one of the most joyous people in our industry. He is such a wonderful company member.
Mm.
Um, oh, Janie D. I adore Janie. She's just has the most incredible soul and just generosity and love that she brings to a room. She's so supportive. Claire Burt
Uh,
is, oh, not only a dear friend, but I just someone who I think if you can ever come close to that, then you will have succeeded. um, yeah, these are all mainly women, aren't they? Says a lot. But yeah, gosh, yeah, as I get older, all I want to do is I really just want to work with people that are wonderful as performers and as people. You only ever want to work with people who you can create a great company with.
mm.
It's really important that people like working with you, and yeah, that people enjoy being in a room with you. That's a huge part of the job, is being a good, strong company member.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it definitely makes a difference. And it's been so lovely getting to meet you over this interview as well. Just as a last question, what do you most want to be remembered for?
Oh, goodness me. um, I think someone who works incredibly hard, um, and is respected for for what I do. Um, I've never wanted to necessarily be famous or anything like that. I just have always wanted people to acknowledge the work that you put into something, whether they think it's good or not. I guess, yeah, just that really, and also being a wonderful mother is now really important to me. I want my son to hopefully think that. I'm not sure he will, but we'll try. Um, but also just being someone who can be positive and like we've talked about a lot in this, really being a good company member, being someone that you want to be with,
Mm.
and spend time with.
Totally. Laura Pitt-Pulford, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, guys. It's been lovely. Thank you very much.